Okay, Patrick, it's another time for me just to sit back. I get to listen to you rant. No, I'm sorry. Describe what this week in trading history.
All right. Well, this week in trading history, I wanted to go back to January 29th of 1892 when the Coca-Cola company was incorporated in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
And
didn't
so
realize it's quite that old.
it's that old. But what was actually the part that got me really interested in sharing the story was rewinding back even further about the origins of the formula and how it actually came about. And so we have to go back to the Civil War when John Pemberton was sustained a saber wound to the chest in the Battle of Columbus. Saber wound to the chest.
As one does when they're in a civil war.
Yeah. He soon became addicted to morphine to ease his pain because supposedly getting a saber into the chest is painful.
Yes. Do you blame the guy?
Anyway, so in a year later, in 1866, he is seeking a cure for his morphine addiction, and so he begins to experiment with painkillers that would serve as a morphine-free alternative, right? And so the first recipe that he comes up with, he calls it the Dr. Tuggle's compound serum of globe flower.
Come on. You're shitting me.
That's
right.
right.
You're making this up now.
No, I'm not making this up. So in which the active ingredient was derived from this button bush, a toxic plant common in Alaska.
Okay, I'm calling bullshit on this now.
So
button bush
yeah.
and Dr. Tuggle's compound syrup of globe flower.
Exactly.
Sounds like something you would get like a type of acid at Woodstock.
Exactly. And so he goes on, he goes, he then begins experimenting with coca, right? And makes coca wine.
Not the chocolate kind of coca.
Exactly. Eventually creating a recipe from cola nut and Damenia, which was later called Pemberton's French wine coca.
Nice.
So he then comes the story of how he gets to making his world famous soda, and so because back then there was public concern about drug addiction, depression, and alcoholism around war veterans and highly strung Southern women. And so Pemberton's medicine was advised as particularly beneficial for ladies and all those whose sedentary employment causes nervous prostration. And so in 1886, there was in Atlanta, they enacted the temperance legislation, and so he had to come up with some new non-alcoholic alternative for his French wine coca. And so that's where they began experimenting with this recipe in which he was formulating through trial and error. And so he basically went through this process of blending all of this and accidentally blended the syrup with carbonated water by accident. And suddenly it was, wow, this actually tastes good. Wow. And so his bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, came up with the name Coca-Cola. And so it was originally touted, his drink, as a tonic for the most common ailments based on off of cocaine from the coca leaf and caffeine-rich extracts of the cola nut. And so the soft drink originally included cocaine, right? And so many of the health claims he made for the product, touting it as a valuable brain tonic. So it would cure headaches, relieve exhaustion, calm nerves, and market as delicious, refreshing, pure joy, exhilarating, and invigorating.
But all your friends would say you're talking too much.
So he then goes on, and they decide to actually sell it as soda fountain stuff, and the advertising became very successful. But as soon as Coca-Cola hit the market, Pemberton fell ill and became nearly bankrupt. So sick and desperate, he began selling the rights to the formula for his business to some business partners in Atlanta. Part of his motivation to sell was he was still suffered from an expensive continuing morphine addiction.
From the saber to the chest.
From his saber wounds. And so he then turns around, knowing that this could become a national drink, he turns around and wants to actually share the ownership with his son, but his son only wanted the money, so they ended up actually just selling out of the entire business to this Asa Griggs Candler, who basically for $1,750 bought the formula, which is basically like $50,000 of today's dollars. And so he died a couple years later of stomach cancer at the age of 57 in 1988, and pretty much died broke. And so by 1891, Candler secured complete ownership and then proceeded to incorporate it, which was This Week in Market History. And the best part was after incorporating it, they didn't remove the cocaine from Coca-Cola until 1903, another 11 years later.
Nice. Now, Patrick, I've actually been to Atlanta, and they actually keep the original formula in some sort of special room. And
Really?
It's still there on the thing. Lena, hop on.
Hi.
You go to Atlanta all the time. Have you gone
Yes,
to
I
the
do.
Coca-Cola museum?
Yes, I have. Right beside the aquarium.
Yes, for sure. And did you go to see the formula?
Oh, no, I actually didn't go.
I didn't either because it was like a long line. So I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
it's
I
pretty
looked at
boring.
the line and I said no.
My favorite whole part about this is that when you go to the Coca-Cola, you get to taste what Coca-Cola tastes like in all the different countries. And you know
Yeah.
that room, and it's crazy, Patrick. There's
Yeah.
so many different formulas, and Coca-Cola tastes different in absolutely every different country. So it's a lot of fun.
It's
so
like
make sure
Willy
you do
Wonka
it.
and the Chocolate Factory, but
I
with
will.
Coke.
I'm going to have to make my way down there. Anyway, that's This Week in Trading History.